Oh, hey, I'm Emily, and this is my best friend Rachel.
Hey, I'm Rachel, and in 2010, aged 18 and fresh out of secondary school,
We went on a gap year, travelling to 5 countries in 5 months.
shockingly, it didn't always go so well. We lost passports,
Ran out of money,
jumped out of aeroplanes,
and landed ourselves in endless ridiculous scenarios.
but what we also managed to do is write a blog about our experiences.
And without smartphones or Instagram at our disposal, this blog is the only record we have of the trip of our young lives.
And 11 years on, we're reliving it all by reading back over our diary entries for your listening pleasure.
Welcome to the Gap Year Diaries podcast.
Oh, hello.
Hello there. Hi,
Hiya.
welcome everyone. Hi Rachel.
Welcome. Hey, Emily.
Welcome
How's it
Rachel to
going?
your own podcast.
Hello. It's
Hello.
Easter. It's Easter.
It
Did
is
the Easter
Easter.
bunny come in and give you some treats?
No.
No, neither did I. I got nothing. A
Why?
sweet pile
Why
of
is the
nothing.
Easter Bunny so callously passed over our houses?
Well, probably because Thailand just don't celebrate Easter and the eggs and Christianity, so that's my excuse. What about you?
I mean, I don't have an excuse.
Probably
But I feel
because
like
of our
that's-
age and
Probably because I'm 30 years old. Also, this is not really why we're here, is it?
no, it's not. No.
Hi, everyone. We're
Hey.
here on episode 1 of the Gap Year Diaries podcast. Episode 1, Rachel, can you even believe it?
I can't believe it. I mean, it took a while to get here. It really did. But I'm
It
so
took
excited
11
to actually
years to
finally
get
be here. It was 11 years. Done my
11
waiting.
years we were waiting for the medium of podcast to become accessible to all. Anyway, yes, as previously mentioned, this is episode 1 of our podcast in which we will discuss the very first entry in our travelling blog. We have also recorded one episode already. For those who have a sort of immediate hunger for more information, which seems unlikely since you've literally just begun to listen, but we thought we would record an episode that touched on some of the sort of context of our trip, so the kind of why we decided to go, how we picked the countries, what the planning process was like, how we saved the money, etc. All the sort of like burning questions that I'm sure everyone immediately already has. So that is already recorded and to be found wherever you get your podcasts, so check that out. But what we're doing right now is we're journeying back 11 years to March the 26th?
It could have been the
2010?
26th. Yeah,
Let's say it was.
March the 26th, 2010. Why not?
When young Rachel and I were aged, well, I was 19, you were 18. Let's be real.
Yeah.
We arrived at Heathrow Airport with
Terminal 5.
Terminal 5, yes, very good. Good to be specific. With our entire families in tow. In fact, I don't know if it was our entire families. I think just my parents came, but perhaps it was your
Yeah,
entire
I
family.
don't think my sister was there. I think it was just
Okay.
neither of our sisters were there. It was
Try
just
to make it sound more romantic than it was. Okay, with our parents in tow. And yeah, I mean, what are your memories of that day, Rach?
Just I remember waking up and being like, I'm not going to see home for another 5 months, and I'm going to be with Em for 5 months, and it was quite an
A
exciting
terrifying
thought.
feeling.
It was exciting. Yeah, we trundled into the airport, and then I remember meeting you, and we had just our big bag. That's what I couldn't get my head around. Like, all of our life was going to be in these like this tiny kind of bag for 5 months, and that was quite insane. How were you feeling?
Yeah, the bags is actually such a palpable memory. I remember both of us like faffing around with the straps when we got to the airport. Like, it was important to make sure that they were fixed on when we were just going through Heathrow Airport.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I was just feeling like, yeah, it's a weird feeling because you can't comprehend 5 months in the moment, can you? You can't sort of like get your head around that length of time. So I think I was
No.
just, I was in a daze really of just sort of not quite believing that I'd let myself get to this point. And I was like, is it too late to cancel? But no, obviously I didn't really want to
I think
cancel.
as well, just not like we were the adults as well in that situation. You know, back at 18, you didn't have someone else that was going to meet you really there on the other side. You had to kind of cope with all of the paperwork and the passport stuff on your own. I remember that. And that was feeling quite daunting.
That was daunting. I remember we had a really sexy blue folder with all of our worldly documents in it. Do you remember that folder?
Because we didn't have a phone, so we had to print out all of the key information. Oh yeah, I do remember that folder now. I'd forgotten about that.
I think we gave it a name, but I can't remember what that name is.
Did we? What, the blue folder of what do we even call it?
I mean, who knows? Maybe we didn't give it a name. Maybe I've made that up.
I remember it was a tearful goodbye. It was quite tugging on the old heartstrings. I mean, it sounds like we're off to flipping war. We weren't, but it was still an emotional...
Just to clarify, we weren't off to war.
No.
We were on an incredibly privileged trip around the world.
Yeah. But yeah, it was difficult to leave. I think that was going to be the longest time I was going to spend away from home, mum, dad, friends, family, the UK. So that was quite a big thing too. And I was just really grateful in that moment to have you by my side, and I wasn't like alone doing it.
Yeah, same, absolutely same. And one of my enduring memories of that, Rachel, is actually that you were wearing almost sort of like an accessory, kind of like reminiscent of a Jacobean ruff. You were wearing like a neck pillow, which you just prematurely just whacked on, presumably when you'd left your house, and there it stayed for the duration of the entire journey, which I think spanned about 26 hours or something.
Oh my god!
And that neck pillow was constantly there.
Wasn't it green? I think it was a green neck pillow. I mean, not only were I was sporting my neck pillow, but we both had matching hoodies from Fat Face.
Oh my god, I literally forgot that we wore matching hoodies. Why did we do that?
Like this, didn't they have like a bean can on them or something, or some kind of like camper van? And I had a red one and you had a blue one. When we thought these hoodies were the coolest hoodies.
Like we're 11-year-old twins from the 90s.
Oh god,
like
we
what
love
the
those
hell?
hoodies. I think we had a grey jumper as well. I remember like loving a grey jumper. I had it for years. I think even my uni friends remember this grey jumper. I mean, there was nothing special about it. It was this boring grey jumper that I
remember the exact jumper. But a lot of our travelling wardrobe was Fat Face.
Yeah, so where were we off to? We were going to Miami first, weren't we?
Yeah, we had a transit flight from Miami to Costa Rica, which was our first destination. Costa Rica, shout out, initial country. Yeah. The apex of the past many months of planning. So yeah, we had I think it was about a 9-hour flight to Miami, and my memory of landing in Miami was that both of us were feeling very different things. We were processing very different emotions. I was feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and generally quite low. What were you doing, Rachel?
What was I doing? Yeah. So I had on my little iPod shuffle, I had downloaded the William Smith song Miami. Will Smith song Miami. And bless you, what do you remember of that moment?
I remember just wishing that you would stop singing Welcome to Miami by William Smith.
No, because I actually bless you, I got the what was it, the earpiece, and I shoved it in your ear, and I just made you enjoy this song. Even the flight attendant was like, all electronics need to be switched off, and then welcome to Miami.
Even if you're playing William Smith.
or
and there was that other song as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, just as that finished, and you probably took a breath of relief. I was like, right,
we're in Miami, bitch.
Yeah, oh my god, I was buzzing. I was so
shockingly
excited.
There's more than one song about Miami. So yeah, we landed in Miami. Those were the sort of varying degrees of hyperactivity we were both rolling with. And then we rolled off the plane and into a queue for immigration, which, God, I mean, it felt like the longest queue I'd ever been in. Miami airport was not a pleasant experience for me. I don't think it was for you either.
Well, no, and I made it 10 times worse because I was absolutely adamant of taking my time to get to customs. Do you remember? I was like, let's look out the window. And you were more like, no, can we just get to customs queue? But I was like, look at this. It's Miami outside. And then I think I was saying to you, why is everybody rushing to get to customs? Like, we're all going to get there eventually. But the reason why, because of the big American queue system, it was very intense. It was quite frightening, actually.
Yeah, it was
like
intense. Neither of us were feeling our best at that time. I think we were also a bit worried that we would miss our connecting flight as well, because even though we had like 5 hours or something, I feel like most of those hours were spent in that queue.
Oh God!
And then we were like,
pillow.
oh my God, with your neck pillow still firmly in place.
Refused to take that off.
Refusing to ever not be able to rest your neck. So then we took like a much smaller, and I would just remember it being a much calmer flight to Costa Rica. Do you remember that?
I kind of remember getting on, just feeling like I had all these heavy layers on, and I couldn't quite believe I was going to another hot place. And again, I just felt like a bit, I just felt very like unclean at that point. I really wanted to have a shower. I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that too. But I do remember that flight was like taking place at night. And I think they had like, you know how when you used to go on a school trip, the coach would have like one TV at the front.
Oh yeah.
I remember that was the same on this plane, and they were showing a film. I can't remember the film. You couldn't hear the film, but I feel like they just put it on to just sort of like lull us all to sleep. But I remember, honestly don't remember. Just remember that there was one. But I do remember like really enjoying that flight a lot more. I just felt much more relaxed on that flight. It was just a bit more chill. Oh good. I'm so glad.
So then when we landed, and do you remember we were wearing those matching hoodies, and we rocked up to an easier, more chilled out Costa Rican vibe of a customs, and the guy was quite fit, and we just instantly fancied him, which is really inappropriate. What was wrong with us?
It was a bit weird. I think
we were just drunk off of freedom.
We were drunk with independence and looking for a man. And
when we were 18 with our neck braces.
We thought that 2 disgusting little children in matching hoodies,
money belts.
Oh my God, don't even. The money belt, I mean, that's a whole thing in and of itself, the money belt.
So at this point we wrangled a taxi, and that was a bit I remember feeling like I don't really know where I was. It was quite intimidating. I just felt a bit like a fish out of water at that point, kind of trundling down roads you've never seen before, and just recognizing there was no bearings. Again, you didn't have Google Maps to be like, oh, it's going to be this long. You didn't really know who you were with as well. So I remember feeling like super alert and super awake, and just hoping that we would get there soon. So the adrenaline that I had landing in Miami had definitely worn off, and I was exhausted. But we came into the hostel about quite late. I think it was like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, easily.
Yeah, I think it was
super late.
It was pretty late, yeah.
And we came in, and there were these, it was a dorm, so you had these bunk beds. You'll see it on the Instagram. And we wanted to go to the bathroom first, just to kind of like wash us, just to feel a bit cleaner.
Not wash ourselves, how people do.
We tiptoed in, didn't we? And we just slowly turned the tap, and then there was this like explosion of sound, and we were like, ah! And we just tried to like immediately switch.
The tap was like,
oh my God.
And we were like, oh my God. Everyone in the whole
water.
dorm room awoke to
Must
us.
have done. That was so embarrassing. I felt so like, deeply uncomfortable, and like I just wanted to go home at that moment. I think I had this feeling of, why are we here again? Just, where's home?
I think there's 2, like, from what you just described, there's like 2 moments that have repeated to me again and again in different traveling scenarios. And the first one is getting that taxi from the airport to wherever you're going, because it's always such a charged moment, I find, or not always a moment, but like a charged
with currency as well. You don't know who you're going to trust as well, or like what's a cheap. You just need to get to your place. Like money at that point is like monopoly money. It doesn't really mean anything.
It really is. That's so true. Yeah, no, you're quite right. It is like monopoly money. And then like, as you're traveling, you're just sort of looking out the window, and often there's the radio on, and you hear often it is just, like world famous songs, but sometimes they're tuned into like a local radio station, and you hear someone speaking in the language, and then the little sort of like device, like the taxi contacting device, I don't know, probably a phone, will sort of bubble into life, and it will be in the native language, and it's just like, you're just like, oh my God, I'm actually in a different place. And because airports are very kind of they're non-distinct.
They're a transitional place, aren't they? That you're not really there. Especially when you say to people, oh, what countries have you been to? You're never allowed to include the airport, are you? That's
No,
always
because
like, no, you weren't there. But then you had to be somewhere. That's always my argument.
Well, no, you're quite right. I think it's classed as like international airspace or something. But yeah, you're right. It is a very weird feeling. And often airports are like in the middle of nowhere. So you have to kind of travel through this sort of arid land to get, and then you start seeing billboards and you start seeing blocks of flats and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting into a city. Yeah, and the other moment is walking into a dorm room for the first time, and that is made all the more intense if people are actually in the dorm room asleep.
Yeah, the sense of unwelcoming, right?
Oh my God, they feel very unwelcoming. And even though even though these people in the dorm room probably don't know each other, haven't really spoken to each other, you do feel a bit like you're intruding on their little gang.
Yeah,
like,
you do.
I really
you
felt
feel like you
that.
have like that space isn't yet yours, so you don't feel like you belong in that space, and there's no markings to show it's yours. Even if you have a bed, it doesn't matter. You feel more comfortable after like the third day, and then you're like in with it.
This is my bunk.
Yeah.
I know this bunk.
Speaking of bunks, speaking of bunks, I remember feeling just jubilant when I asked you which bunk do you want, like praying you say the bottom one, because I'm such a kid and I wanted the top one. He said, I'd like the bottom one. I was like, yeah, I'll get the top one then. I like that.
You were absolutely overjoyed by that.
I was so excited.
But yeah, that was literally like our very first. That was day one. I can't believe it was day one. It was so strange to be like.
Just a lot of travelling, wasn't it?
It was a lot of travelling.
Yeah, it was quite a long day.
But obviously, of course, we faithfully blogged about that day. And this was the very first blog entry, of course it was. And I feel like considering it was the very first blog entry, quite momentous occasion, like might want to kind of really set the scene, get some good descriptive language in there. I would describe this blog entry as underwhelming at best and also short. It's about 200 words. But the first line, what I love is, do you remember I think it was maybe 2014, 2015 when Kim Kardashian broke the internet?
Oh, with the bum pic?
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, turns out, Rachel, that she wasn't the first to break the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Because the very first line of this blog is, Rachel and I just almost broke the internet in this rickety hostel, both trying to write our first blog at the same time.
Yeah,
I mean, first of all, that is shocking planning that we were both trying to write the blog at the same time. Why did we do
know
that?
What we were doing?
Do you remember the computers that we were writing this first blog entry on? Because I have such a vivid memory of the little computer area of the hostel. The hostel was called Casa Yoses. That was the name of the hostel. Which will forever stick in my mind for reasons that will become abundantly clear as we proceed with this podcast. But yeah, you're right, there were three, and they were all, the classic big booty bitches. They were like huge computers, like Windows 95.
TV screen, just boxes, basically, white boxes. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. But I think that was quite a moment as well, because you were like, okay, so the internet is quite a precious resource on this trip, because we didn't have smartphones. It was just before smartphones were really a thing. And yeah, so in order to actually access the internet, you either had to rely on the computers that you were given in hostels, or roll into an internet cafe. I don't know if they even exist anymore in this country. I'm sure they do.
You see them boarded up in Thailand. That's what I tend to see. Yeah, but no one really using them. No, they're quite a dying breed.
I know, it's a shame, because I have such memories of them. But yeah, so that's where we were writing this blog. What do you remember about Casa Yoses?
The smell of it. It's just this sort of moulding smell. I just remember how it was like a weird little community, wasn't it? It was just a bizarre place with bizarre characters. It was a characterful place, which I think is on the other blog of it. But I remember seeing it on the internet for the first time, and it was just so overwhelmingly exciting to see this. And do you remember I showed you, and you got actually the same amount of excitement? But it wasn't a hotel. I don't know why. Looking back, I was so excited. I think it's because we had booked it, and it was our decision. It was for a good price. But Wolfie Eyes stands out for me. Wolfie Eyes just was the receptionist who had these beautiful eyes, messy hair, and just has very like cool Costa Rican vibe. And he was welcoming. He was a sweet man. I remember him.
He welcomed us in with his wolf-like eyes. I don't remember why we decided his eyes were wolf-like, but
they were quite intense. I think they were sort of intense, but like kind. I don't really know.
I mean, neither of us have stared a wolf in the eyes.
Neither of us have owned a wolf and so on. But
owned a wolf. in any way encountered a wolf. But yeah, he was on reception as we arrived, and yeah, he was a nice guy. He was keen, but he was there for the duration of the time we spent at this hostel. It remains my favourite hostel, even though it was, in all honesty, a bit of a dive.
But do you think it's because it's iconic, it's representative of our time abroad, our
Definitely.
independence, the beginning part of the trip? It is the hostel that stands in my mind probably the most.
Absolutely.
When I think.
I mean, it was... well, my favourite thing about it was that as you got to know it, you got to know its quirks. Like, you got to know which... So there was one shower that always had cockroaches, and the other shower, like, if you touched a certain bit of it, would literally electrocute you. And you kind of like learnt these things. You kind of, you moulded yourself into Cassios's vibe, and you were like, okay, yeah, I know that if I'm, in a mood where I'm not really up for cockroaches, I'll go into the electrocution shower. That's fine.
Just get a casual. I mean, I don't remember being electrocuted. I remember you being electrocuted. I remember
probably because I was electrocuted first, and then I was like acted as a warning for everyone else.
Like, don't go into the shower. But we did get a point where we needed to eat. So we had to go to Wolfie Eyes.
Yes, we did.
Hey, we didn't actually say Wolfie to his face. That would be ridiculous. But we had to get a map. Do you remember that? Like the paper map to show us where the supermarket was, which was like a 10-minute walk. And so we jaunted out.
Supermercado.
And if you've listened to the previous episode, you'll know that Emily and I had some self-defense lessons thanks to my mother, and there were a few guys milling around the supermarket.
We were ready, raring.
We were ready
to use.
I was staring them down.
In the middle of the potato aisle, we were like, "Oh my god, it's on! It is on!" So yeah, I have packed all of that into one uncharacteristically succinct paragraph, which reads thus: after crashing into the hostel at about 1 a.m, we were correct, it was 1 a.m, to wake every other sleeping person in our room, we proceeded to lock ourselves in the bathroom and have an angry whispered conversation about... Oh, Rachel, this contradicts what we were just saying, because this says an angry whispered conversation about the raging receptionist we had encountered on checking in and the general awkwardness of the situation. So maybe Wolfie Eyes was there the next morning. Maybe he didn't actually check us in. Clearly it was some other person that was just livid with us. Probably because we were checking in at 1 a.m. Maybe.
But it was a 24-hour reception.
I know.
Again, another quirk.
Mean that.
Yeah.
And then I've written... We then decided to brush our teeth and turned on one of the massively antiquated taps, shade, only to cause a cacophony of noise which sounded like the bathroom was about to implode.
It was so
loud.
My
god, so accurate.
It was like a jackhammer. I remember the sheer noise of it.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? It was literally just the most noise you could ever imagine plumbing could possibly make.
From a tap. Yeah, god.
Yeah, it was wildly unfortunate. So yeah, and the next paragraph I'd like to highlight, Rachel, is the next morning, which follows a similar vein. I don't know if you recall. People were still asleep because I think it was quite early in the morning, and Rachel obviously decided that it was time. Nature called, basically. And this is what the paragraph says. A while after, Rachel decided to head to the bathroom, and instead of using the accepted ladder format that bunk beds are known to provide, she leapt from the top down like some sort of superhero, causing a juddering crash that resounded throughout the Cassios's hotel, waking most of San Jose. Nothing like a hyperbole. And then proceeded to whisper to me about breakfast. I remember you literally leapt down. I remember I saw it. It was so weird. Like, and your sort of t-shirt you were wearing like billowed out as you leapt like a weird sort of bat taking flight. And then you just smashed down to the floor. And I remember everyone in the fucking room like just looked up like, what the hell is happening? And then you just were so oblivious to this absolute chaos that you'd caused. You just came over and you were like, Emily, hi, okay, so I was like, babes, it's way too late for that.
Oh my god. Oh, it's so stupid.
Oh, it was
God.
great.
I do love how you wrote that, like, crashed onto the floor and proceeded to whisper to me about breakfast. Oh dear.
I mean,
I think you actually
shape
had
of
to have
things to
words with
come.
me. You had stern words. Right,
I did have
Rachel.
stern words. Yeah, of course
Cannot
I did.
be doing that.
Rachel,
Oh.
for God's sake.
We've just got here. Less than 24 hours.
What did we have for breakfast? I remember the hostel provided breakfast, but I'm trying to remember what it was. I feel like it was sugar puffs. I remember some sort of weird pink yogurt, like tubby custard.
Didn't you call it tubby custard? And you were just like, little tubby custard.
I love how I endlessly replay the same gag, like obviously a gag I made 11 years ago, just coming back. I do.
It was a
remember that I
very
called it tubby
unclean
custard.
kitchen. I remember that, just feeling
There
a
were
bit,
lots of bugs around, weren't there? I
not
think
really
after a
selling this
while
place.
No, we're not. But I think like the thing is, it was minging. Like there's no two ways about it. It was a minging hostel, but we just loved it. I think like for the reasons you said, it was our first hostel. It was like a first taste of freedom, a first taste of tubby custard. We really did bond with it, and there, it had life to it, didn't it? I remember it had some really cool hammocks hanging outside that we were just like endlessly hogging all the time.
I actually think that's where your love of hammocks came from.
My famous love of hammocks.
Yeah, you were like dedicated. Right, when I get to uni, I'm going to get myself a hammock. Like, okay, all right.
That
it
did
never
not
happened
happen.
though, sadly.
Where would I have bloody put a hammock in the university halls?
I have no idea.
And also, can you imagine people would have been like, "Oh my god, have you met Hammock Girl?"
Yeah. Where would you hang it? Like that. I think I remember asking you this, and you were like, "It does. I'll find a place. One day,
what an
Emily, you'll
absolute
get your
loser.
hammock. Don't you worry."
I
Don't you
will.
worry.
One day I'll live with my
One
hammock
day.
and it'll be great. Okay, so we'll read the very last line of this blog, and then we'll move on with our lives. So the last line is, anyway, I'll wrap it up as today will be pretty uneventful, involving only us venturing further into San Jose for an exciting supermarket trip. So clearly we had minimal plans for that day. As will become clear for the next episode. The next day actually turned out to be pretty eventful, I would say.
Oh yeah, very eventful, yes. And that's all coming up on the next episode. I start. Okay. I was about to call you Rachel though. That's my name, Emily. So stupid because I'm just reading my name on the script.
So Rachel.
Rachel to lead. Okay, no, Emily. Who was the best person you met? I mean, a tricky question considering the travel nature of the day, but still, there were some people we met. Who was the best one?
A good question. A question we will be asking every episode. The best person.
Good question we planned.
A question that we've literally meticulously planned. The best person we met on this leg of the trip. I actually want to say, like, I thought about this, and I know this is really like already breaking the rules, like early doors, but I really want to say that the best person we met was someone that we famously did not meet, because when Rachel and I had booked this extravaganza, so when we went to Costa Rica primarily to volunteer at a sea turtle conservation project, but we arrived in San Jose we had a few days there to settle in before we went to this project that was on the coast. And as part of this, I don't know, there were so many different like organisations involved in the planning that I think both of us just sort of like let it float over our heads. But we didn't realise that someone from the Costa Rica Language Academy was supposed to meet us from the airport and accompany us to Casillas, presumably being like, they're 18-year-old idiots. They will need someone to intervene, otherwise God knows where they'll end up. So this obviously didn't go into our heads because we just cruised out of the airport none the wiser. Like, I think it was so obvious that it would have been us because we were too, we were very, very, very conspicuous with our matching hoodies and our giant rucksacks.
Oh,
but
God.
this poor woman was stood, and your neck brace. This poor woman was stood at the airport with a sign with our names on it, like welcoming, and we just walked straight past. I didn't even realise.
We literally cruised right on past, didn't we?
And it turns out that she was quite annoyed about it. Like, word got to us a day or so later that the Costa Rica Language Academy was not happy with us. And And this woman especially was not happy because it turns out she'd continued to wait at the airport for a few more hours thinking that she'd missed
God,
us.
I feel really awful. Like, I don't really remember this story, but I feel bad either way.
Obviously, it's really like weighed heavy on my heart for the last 11 years.
Yeah,
but
it really has. Do you want to
I know
write her
that
a
sounds
letter?
yeah, I do actually. I know that sounds weird to say that she was the best person we met, but she does come up again. We do re-meet her, so I feel like I can count her because we did actually meet her later down the line, but she's going to be mine. So who's your best person we met?
I quite like that. It sort of sets the tone for the sort of ridiculousness of the trip.
It really does. Two blathering fools.
Just walk straight
Just
past our lift and
around like we own the
haggle
place.
down a taxi. Yeah. Who was my best person? Yeah, I think it is probably fair to say Wolfie Eyes, just because he was the first person that we nicknamed. We nicknamed everyone that we met. We just had like their own little name, didn't we, that we referred to.
That's so true. He was, yeah.
And I do remember his sort of piercing eyes and kindness. And he was a good support system to us. I mean, albeit he was a bit forced to be one, but still he came through for us.
we thrust that mantle onto him quite aggressively, but
we
yes,
did,
he
and
really
he still remains in our hearts. Well, so I would say he was the best person, a good introduction to Wolfie Eyes. That's my guy, my guy.
Oh, my guy.
Yeah, my guy.
Okay,
Sorry.
there's more. So do you have like a key lesson that you learnt from that small period of the trip?
Get to Miami customs as fast as you can. Quite literally, don't dawdle like I did.
Life hack.
Yeah, life hack. No, I think this is a bit of a cop-out answer. I'm so sorry, but it was a benchmark. The tiredness levels, I just never experienced tiredness quite ever like it, and have never to this day experienced it. Just something about traveling across those time zones, oceans, and two different countries, and just this overwhelming sense of not quite knowing like where you're going. I mean, I knew where I was going, but not really knowing it, having ever seen it in the flesh. It took a lot out of you. So I don't really know what lesson there is in that, but it's just definitely a key memory. So I didn't answer the question at all, and I apologise. Sorry, Emily.
Well,
sorry, listeners.
That bodes well for the format of the podcast moving forward. But
I promise that will be the one time I'll do some kind of
like
weird non-answer. That's all right.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, Emily, what was a lesson that you learned?
I think I would say, obviously, like a practical lesson that we learnt to our detriment was to remember to label your own food when you're putting it in a communal fridge in a hostel.
Yeah.
But a more poignant lesson I learnt was, I think, if you're afraid of doing something, or if something's making you feel anxious and you're just like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this, just try and do it anyway, because 9 times out of 10 you can do it. Like, I felt so anxious before we left, and I was really like, oh my God, why did I think this was a good idea, blah 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 blah. But then as soon as we got to Casa Yoses, I was like, right, we're here. This is a massive step forward, and it's, I can do it, it will be okay. And I think, like, just do things in steps, take the first small step, and things will be okay. I mean, that is sickening. I feel like I'm on comic relief, but
no, that's a really great lesson. Thank you for sharing. I think that lesson you can revisit time and time again in life as well. And considering considering our first episode is all about travel and taking the first step of the journey, I think that really, wraps in quite nicely, links quite nicely. Well, we have got, wow, we've done it. We've got to the end of the first episode. That's so exciting. I had so much fun making this and chatting, going back down memory lane.
Traveling back, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the second episode coming up, and that explains a bit more about what happened on the so-called quiet, nondescript day. Some real stuff hits the fan, basically. So if you would like to follow us in the meantime on our Instagram, Gap Year Diaries Podcast, and follow from wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you'd like to leave a review, leave a couple stars, that would be amazing. We would love that.
A couple would be a shame, I would say. Please don't just leave a couple.
Yeah, ignore that.
Be more generous with your reviews. I mean, please.
Oh gosh. Yeah, so Emily, is there anything else you want to say?
No, not really. I'm just really excited to go back over these blogs. I haven't read them for a while. I mean, shockingly, why would I? But but I'm really excited to sort of like go back into my 19-year-old head and read about the kind of stuff that I thought was noteworthy at the time.
I'm excited to go down on that journey with you, and I do just want to say a final thank you to anyone who tuned into this that wasn't our parents. Thanks so much.
Thanks. I mean, my parents will absolutely not tune in, so there's not even any point.
It's really,
saying
really
thanks to them.
appreciated. It's genuinely appreciated. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Right.
Bye,
Bye,
Rach.
guys. Oh, bye, Em. See you later.
Bye, I'm off. See ya.
Okay, thanks,
I've got shit to do.